Okay, we're recording now. Sound good?
Okay.
So, where are we right now?
Downstairs.
I know, but we're downstairs, but where are we? Like, we're not at home right now.
Yeah.
Where are we?
Anderson Island.
Right, we're on Anderson Island, right? And we're out here, and we just thought we'd talk a little bit about what is your favorite number?
My favorite number is 8 and 75 because I don't know if you heard about this game, but it's called Fortnite. And the first game I ever played, I got 75th place.
You got 75th place, and so now you like the number 75.
Yeah.
And why do you like the number 8?
Because I'm 8.
Hey, Pete, it has been a long time since we recorded an episode together. How are you doing?
I am very, very bueno. It's the holiday season, and I'm just in a good mood all around. And I'm glad to be here doing another episode with you.
I am really glad to be here doing another episode as well. And I've got a question. What was that we heard at the start of the show? That was not our usual opening. Usually we open up with a sketch, and that sounded like something different.
Yeah, it was a conversation that I recorded with Oliver, my littlest kiddo. He was 8 at the time, as you know from the recording. So we were visiting my sister-in-law and talking about some of Oliver's favorite things. And he wanted to actually do an episode of the Math Club where he talked about his favorite things. And I was like, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, I like pizza and I like video games. And he wanted to talk about all this on the show. And that's when I was like, well, what about numbers? Do you like numbers? And then he goes, oh, yeah. And so we just did a little interview.
And I think that's great that you had that conversation and that it led us here. But what I really love is the reason he chose 8 as one of his favorite numbers is because when you recorded this, he was 8. I mean, it makes me wonder, you recorded that so long ago that he's had a birthday since then. I think he kind of maybe thought he was going to be 8 for the rest of his life.
Well, actually, he's had 2 birthdays since we did that recording. And it's interesting you mention this because I did ask him about this. Like, you're not going to be 8 forever. So what does that mean?
Well, you're going to be 9 soon.
So then I'll change it.
You can just do that?
Mm-hmm.
Just like, see you later, 8. Now I like 9.
Yeah.
Okay. And
I'll have it for a whole 365 days. I mean, that's long.
So, Oliver is in fact 10 now, but as long as we've been doing the show, he's kind of had this interest in like the Math Club itself, as though it's a place that he could come and visit us, like you and me, like sit on the couch in our Math Club living room, I guess. And so when he said, like, could we do an episode about this? It was just perfect. I thought, absolutely, yes.
Okay, but I'm going to have to vacuum the Math Club before he comes over.
Oh, dear Lord, we've got a lot of cleaning to do.
I mean, all those birds. There's a lot of feathers.
Feathers everywhere.
Anyway, I do think that the idea that Ollie had that then morphed into an idea of doing a favorite number episode seemed like a really cool idea, but I'm not sure that everyone is going to find this as interesting.
What are you thinking about, Bert?
Oh, my favorite number.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Gee, that sounds, boring, Bert.
Well, you know what, Noah? I think most all of our listeners, both human and Muppet, are going to think this is a pretty good episode.
Yeah, well, I certainly don't think that it sounds boring. I think it sounds like a really cool idea. And what we decided to do was open it up to our entire audience. So we reached out to our listeners. We reached out to previous guests that we've interviewed on the show. I know you and I both emailed all of our friends too, and members of our families, and we actually got responses from lots of people.
We did. And I've got a $1 million idea. Why don't we listen to some of those here on the show?
That, my friend, is $1 million idea. So let's get the ball rolling. Here's one that we got from a listener who I would say clearly is a kindred spirit of Ollie's, especially when it comes to the reason she chose her favorite number.
Hello to the Math Club podcast. My name is Nicole, and I just wanted to answer the question of what my favorite number is. And I think my favorite number has to be 30, because when I turned 30, I was a fully actualized adult. I had my own house, I had my career set, I finished school, everything was going for me at that time. So I really enjoyed the number 30.
Well, that's a pretty interesting story, and it makes me wonder, Noah, when do you think you'll become a fully actualized adult?
I used to have a timer running, but it stopped counting down at some point, and it's just been frozen there ever since. But anyway, moving on. Here are another couple of birthday-related favorite numbers from a couple listeners named Bryn and Adam. Actually, just to set this up, Bryn had two favorite numbers that he shared. We'll get to the first one a little later in the episode, but this one was his other favorite number.
My second favorite number is the number 12. That's because my wife and my daughter are both born on the 12th, and that's become quite a lucky number for me as a result.
I'm a big fan of the number 311. The reason is, besides it being my father's birthday, it was my childhood dog's birthday. And we got to see him being born on my dad's birthday. But my second dog, coincidentally, also had that same birthday of March 11th. And 311 is a pretty good band, so all things considered, I'm going to go with 311 for my favorite number.
You know, Pete, it's not just the listeners that tend to do this, because I don't know if I ever told you this, but my favorite number is 73. And some listeners might be jumping to the wrong conclusion that I was born in 1973, but I wasn't. I'm actually older than that. I was born in...
You and me both, brother.
We were both born in 1971, but 73 is still birthday related for me. My birthday is July 3rd, and here in the United States, that gets abbreviated 7/3. And so 73 has always been a favorite number of mine. And a second reason is that I've also always liked pairs of numbers that add up to 10, like 8 and 2, 6 and 4, 5 and 5, 7 and 3 happens to be one of those numbers, and it's got the birthday connection. And so it was just the perfect number for me.
You might consider looking at pi and 10 minus pi. That's a lovely pair that adds up to 10 also.
I'll look into those after the show.
Well, you know, those are some pretty mathy numbers, 10 minus pi and pi. And I think we've got another clip here of somebody who has a pretty mathematical reason for also liking the number 73.
Oh, do you mean Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory?
I do.
The best number is 73. You're probably wondering why. 73 is the 21st prime number. Its mirror, 37, is the 12th. And its mirror, 21, is the product of multiplying, hang on to your hats, 7 and 3. Did I lie?
You know, it's probably not going to surprise folks to learn that I have some friends who are mathematicians as well, and they tend to have favorite numbers for very mathematical reasons. In fact, my friend Brad, who I went to UC Davis with back in the mid-90s, called in to tell us about his favorite number, and it's pretty mathy.
Hi, Pete and Noah. My name is Brad Ballinger. I'm a math professor at Cal Poly Humboldt. I'm here to tell you that 1/7 is my favorite number, and it can be your favorite number too. Written in decimal form, 1/7 is 0.142857, 142857, and so on. It's a repeating decimal with a 6-digit repetend. Very complicated behavior for a fraction with such a tiny denominator. One thing I think is magical about 1/7 is how its multiples, 2/7, 3/7, and so on up through 6/7, are all made of the same digits in the same order. The only difference is where they start in the cycle. There's another way to build the decimal expansion of 1/7, and it's very strange. We double 7 and scoot it 2 places to the right to get 0.14. We double that and scoot it 2 places to the right to get 0.0028. Continue like this and add up all the numbers we find. The longer we do this, the closer we get to 1/7.
Pete, I totally see what you mean there. Brad chose his number for an extremely mathy reason. And it makes me wonder, do you think mathematicians in general have mathier reasons for choosing their favorite numbers than non-mathematicians do?
The thing is that mathematicians have been exposed to a lot of mathematics. Most of us have been thinking about it for, well, an astonishing long time, given the reveal that I was born in the early 70s. I have been thinking about numbers for a long time and about mathematics in general. So I'm going to say, yeah, I think mathematicians probably have some fairly specialized reasons that are available to them because they've learned so much mathematics. Like, for example, Brad's favorite number, 1/7, I first encountered something like that in high school with the number 22/7. So not 1/7 on the nose, but it's pretty close.
It's 22 times bigger, Pete.
It is, but I was thinking that more to the point, it's the same thing as 3 and 1/7, which makes it 3.142857 and so on.
The beginning of that number sounded a little familiar.
Yeah, it's a pretty good approximation to pi. And actually, you and I talked about 22/7 back way at the beginning when we did our first episode ever, the pilot episode, where we talk about Archimedes and his approximation to pi.
Archimedes the owl.
Yes, Archimedes, the owl. I'm an ornithologist by day and a mathematician by night. So yes, it's the owl.
And you just brought up pi. You've actually brought up pi a couple of times now. You recommended it as part of a pair of numbers that adds up to 10, and you just mentioned it again. And since we're on the subject of pi, we also received a written submission from a listener named Megan, and I want to share her story with you. She wrote in and said, I'm not sure where I got this, but it is my answer to just about everything. The first time that my kid told me to pick a number between 1 and 10, I picked pi over 6. I was informed that I was supposed to pick an integer.
Well, hey, this gives me another idea. 10 minus pi over 6 and pi over 6, huh? You should think about that pair of numbers.
I will add it to the list.
Well, here's something else cool. Megan has been a friend of mine going back to the days of grad school, but at Seattle. So I met Megan a couple of years after I met Brad. Megan and I spent a lot of time together in those first years at the University of Washington. Our offices were right next door to each other. And so we had this really cool circle of friends. And I just wanted to say, hi, Megan. Thanks for writing in. Your number's rad.
And Megan, I also think it's cool that your favorite number is an irrational number. I don't think your kid found it that funny, but I definitely do. And it's the first example we've had so far of someone picking an irrational number.
But Megan wasn't the only one. We got a second written submission, this time from math educator Howie Hua, who wrote in about his favorite number. And here's what he said. My favorite number is 16 or 24, but if I was asked my favorite constant, it might have to be 1 over e, because it's so surprising that the chance of getting a derangement is close to 1 over e.
I'm not sure what that means, but it definitely sounds pretty deranged.
Derangements are actually less deranged than you might think and probably fairly familiar. For example, if you shuffle a deck of cards and no card ends up in the same position it was in before the shuffle, that's a derangement.
Oh, okay. Well, that's not as deranged as I was thinking. And back to the question I was asking you a few minutes ago. What I'm noticing is that it really does sound to me like mathematicians tend to choose their favorite numbers in different ways than the rest of us. Because like you said, there's so many cool mathematical facets for them to kind of glom onto and provide them with different reasons for choosing a favorite number. And here's another example. We have a listener named Roderick. I'm not 100% sure if Roderick is a mathematician by trade, but I would almost bet from his answer that he's got a pretty strong math background.
So I want to tell you about one of my favorite numbers. That number is 144. A lot of people will recognize right away that 144 is a perfect square because it's 12 times 12. 144 also happens to be a Fibonacci number. That's the first one aside from 1, I think, that is both a Fibonacci number and a perfect square.
Yeah, that's totally the kind of thing that I would expect from a mathematician. These sort of number theoretic or other kind of like cool properties that, anybody could think about, but mathematicians are especially likely to think about. Now, Roderick did go on to give a few other mathematical reasons for liking the number 144, but he also has a kind of funny reason for liking it too.
It's also just one of a small handful of numbers that has its own non-numerical name, which is, of course, a gross. And this makes for one of my favorite math jokes, which is, why should you never mention the number 288 in polite company? Because it's too gross.
Too gross. That was pretty funny. And you know what it reminds me of? Do you happen to remember Dave Gillette?
Oh, sure. Your friend from Comedy Sports back in college days. And actually, he's been on a show before.
That's right. He was in our joke episode. Well, I also reached out to him and he called in to answer our question too.
Hey, Math Club, David Gillette, friend of the show. Happy to answer your question, although it is an unusual one. My favorite number. So let me consider this. So when it comes to those things that are numbers, those things that will numb pain is what I must assume you mean. There's 4 general categories, and let's just dive right in. Okay, so over the counter, there's a lot of...
You know what, dude? I guess when I sent him the question just via text, it was missing a little bit of important context.
Yeah, like when you said he called in to answer our question, I think he's answering a different question.
But it does sound like important information. Do you think our listeners are going to want to hear about all these anesthetics?
No, I don't. This is not the Anesthesiology Club. That's an entirely different podcast, if it even exists at all.
You're right. And holy cow, is he still going back there?
Get on with it, Dave.
If I have to dive even deeper in articane, I'm going to go with a new one, At17, which is kind of a new analog for articane. And 17 happens to be my favorite number. So that... Oh. Number. Okay.
I'm glad you finally got it, Dave. But I'm afraid we're out of time for you.
Hold on. Let's hear why he likes 17 so much.
So my favorite number is 17, and that's just because when I was in first grade, my class number was 17, and when I was in second grade, my student number was 17, so it just kind of stuck.
Whew, glad we got through that in one piece. I actually was really sure we were going to make it. You know what's interesting is that although we didn't have a ton of overlap in people's favorite numbers, we did have another listener call in to talk about the number 17, and that is Andy Looney, the creator of the card game Flux, who joined us a few episodes ago. Here's what he had to say about the number 17.
My favorite number is 17, and it has been ever since I was a kid, when I first noticed that this number appears surprisingly often in literature. It's always the 17th attempt, or they've already rejected 17 candidates, or no one has been there in 17 years, etc. I even remember the specific movie that instilled this fascination, The Great Escape. It was Charles Bronson's 17th tunnel. Later, when doing Mad Flux, I figured out why. It's the least random number, a seemingly random choice, rather high but not too high, very unround, the lowest prime number with no particular meaning or other associations, etc.
You know, I really love Andy's story about all the places that the number 17 cropped up in his life.
Yeah, and this is not the first time that we're thinking of these favorites in terms of stories.
No, it's not. And that's a really excellent point. I'm noticing that everybody seems to choose their favorite number for a different reason, but every single one of them boils down to being part of some story from their life.
Well, let me tell you a story right now about Brad, who we heard from just a couple of minutes ago. Brad and I were at UC Davis together, and a bunch of us one night had gone out to see the movie Pi. I don't know if you've seen it. Do you know that movie?
I've seen it, but it's been a while.
It's a bunch of grad student friends, and we're going out to see Pi. I mean, it's like a natural thing to do, right? So in the movie, the number 216 plays a pretty significant role. And after the movie, as we're kind of milling out of the theater. It's a weird movie. And so somebody goes, what did you guys think? And without skipping a beat, Brad goes, I think 2 cubed, 3 cubed.
What does that even mean?
Well, it turns out it means two things. First and foremost, Brad had factored the number 216 during the movie. And in fact, its factorization is 2 cubed, 3 cubed, right? That's 8 times 27, which is 216.
Okay.
Also, though, 2 cubed, 3 cubed, 827, that was my street address of the house I was living at the time. And Brad also realized that 2 cubed, 3 cubed was 827, my address.
That is super nerdy, but also very funny.
And also very Brad. Brad, if you're listening, I love you, man.
And while we're talking about your time at Davis, we also heard from another one of your old math friends, Joe Harden. Didn't the two of you go to Davis together also?
Yeah. In fact, Joe was a statistics grad student at the time, and her department was just one floor up from the math department.
Well, you mean 1 cubed floors up?
I mean, 1 cubed floors up. But what did she have to say?
Well, let's take a listen.
Hi, Noah. Hi, Pete. Thanks for all the ways that you make math super fun. And thanks also for asking me about my favorite number. Some of you may find this number political, but I wish it wasn't, because it has been my favorite number for more than 30 years. My alma mater is Pomona College, and I now teach at Pomona College. And along with a mascot, we also have a college number. It's 47. It's prime, it shows up everywhere, and it's fantastic.
You know, we now have a few prime numbers on the list. So Joe just told us about 47, prime. Both Andy and Dave picked 17, also prime. And you and Sheldon both picked 73. That's quite a few prime numbers.
Yeah, there were quite a few primes. And getting back to what Joe just said, I have to point out that not every single mathematician who called in chose their favorite numbers for strictly mathematical reasons. Joe went with a very personal connection, but I would point out there's still a story there, right? And so these stories can take a variety of different forms, but there always seems to be some kind of a personal connection to a story that leads to this becoming someone's favorite number.
Yeah, in fact, my first favorite number goes back to when I was a kid. That number is 5, and it's because that was the number on my soccer jersey.
I remember you bringing that up in one of our previous episodes. Weren't you on a team called the Stormtroopers back then?
I was. And would you believe me if I told you that this isn't the only time Star Wars is going to make an appearance on someone's favorites list?
This is Ed Meehan, and my lucky number, best number, favorite number, 77. I don't exactly know why. I only know that ever since I was a little kid, I drew it on every race car or plane that I drew. And I suspect it has something to do with the fact that that's the year that Star Wars came out.
You know, I'm gonna have to call Ed out here, because he starts off by saying he's got no idea why this is his favorite number. And miracle of miracles, it somehow leads right to Star Wars.
Yeah, and I think you would agree. You know, you and I have both known Ed since college. And can you think of any person that loves Star Wars more than Ed?
No. In fact, if I thought of 77 people, the one in that list who likes Star Wars the most would be Ed Meehan, 100% guaranteed.
So Ed, spoiler alert, you like 77 because it's the year Star Wars came out. End of story.
Yeah, we got your number pegged, Ed.
Let's move on to a different story. We actually heard from my wife, Carol, on this episode, who never has called into the show before, by the way, in 3 years we've been doing it. But favorite numbers come up, and you know Carol, she's a third grade teacher. She's going to jump in and tell us what her favorite number is.
Oh, cool. Let's hear it. I can't wait.
Hi, Pete and Noah. This is Carol. I don't currently have a favorite number, but I think I do remember that 8 used to be my favorite number, or a number I really liked when I was young, because it was symmetrical, both horizontally and vertically, which is strange to me now because I don't particularly like symmetry. But now, as an elementary teacher, and a lot of teachers share this, I really like the number 24 to have as the number of students in my class. seating arrangements are easier, and you can group your kids in so many ways, partners and small groups and big groups, uh, until someone's absent, and that screws everything up. But the number 24 is pretty awesome in a classroom. Okay, thanks, guys. Bye.
Boy, one kid goes absent, and now you're stuck with 23.
There's another prime number.
Yeah, and as a prime number, it's going to do you no favors when putting kids in groups.
Okay, fair enough, but that does not mean that 23 can't be appealing to people for some other reasons. We heard from our good friend Pete Mullen, who actually co-hosted an episode of the show once when you were out of town, and his favorite number is 23.
So 23 has been my favorite number for quite some time. Of course, there's always the chromosome thing, 23, and it was Michael Jordan's number, and it's been lots of other things. But if you flip it around, it's also Magic Johnson's number, Shaquille O'Neal's number. It seems to be this number that comes up a lot. My favorite basketball stars, and there's no real great mathematical reason for it. It's just a sports reason and chromosomes.
You know, after listening to Mullen's recording, it made me wonder if Michael Jordan's favorite number is 23. And believe it or not, he actually went on record about how 23 is not his favorite number.
Oh, right, because it's actually 22.5.
And you're exactly half right.
The significance of 23. Well, in high school, when I played with my brother, my favorite number was 45, and his favorite number was 45. But we were on the same teams. So he had seniority, he had the option to wear 45, so I just figured 23 was half of 45, 22 and a half. So I grabbed 23, and 23 has kind of stuck with me the whole time.
So, you know, that thing about people's favorite numbers being based on athletes' numbers on their jerseys, you wouldn't believe it, but that came up more often than you might think.
Well, given that my first favorite number was the number from my jersey, I actually would believe it. And in fact, a friend of mine, going way back to middle school, Jeff Winslow, he called in and he has a similar reason for his favorite number.
Hey, Peter and Noah. This is Jeffrey, and I guess I have had two favorite numbers. Back in the kind of mid to late 80s, early 90s, it was probably the number 8, because that was Steve Young's number, the quarterback for the 49ers, and I would wear that number for when I was playing soccer. And then Prince came out with the Gold album maybe around 2001, and there was a song on there called 319. 319. And I like that number, and it would pop up for me during times of my life, like staying at hotels, and they would randomly give me the room 319, 319 as an example. So kind of fun.
And you weren't even the only person in your family that chose their favorite number based on their jersey number in a sport, if memory serves.
Oh, you're right. You know, that night on Anderson Island, when I was talking with Ollie about his favorite number, my older kiddo, Elliot, came into the room and I asked him what his favorite number was, and his was related to a jersey too.
If I just said the first thing that came off my head, probably like 13.
13, and why 13?
I don't know. I just always liked 13.
Okay.
More for like basketball when I was younger and everything. So.
Well, Elliot's jersey leads us right into the number 13, which we all know is a famous number, right? It's got all of this mythology around it. But it turns out that our listeners like the number 13, sometimes for mathematical reasons, and other times, ironically, for its luckiness.
Oh, yeah. You might all remember Bryn Haswell. We heard him earlier in the episode. He had said he had two favorite numbers. We already heard one of them, but his other favorite number was 13.
My first favorite number is 13, and that's sort of always been the case. I think partly due to the fact that everyone else sees it as quite unlucky. I didn't. I thought it was quite a cool number. So it was almost a counter protest to that.
And just as a side note, listening to this next little bit from Colin Wright, I'm kind of forced to wonder if the House of Lords decreed that all proper British subjects had to choose the number 13 as their favorite.
So let me tell you about the other number I like.
and that's 13. It's the first number that's the sum of two squares, where each square is bigger than 1. And because it's the sum of two squares, if you work modulo 13, there is a square root of -1. And that's kind of cool.
Well, he didn't mention derangements, but what the heck did all of that mean?
You know, it's actually some pretty cool stuff related, believe it or not, to Fermat, but I think we're going to have to leave that story for another time.
Okay, but there was still a very mathy reason.
Oh, yeah. And, you know, like you've pointed out before, mathematicians like Colin and myself, we sometimes do have very mathy reasons for picking our favorite numbers.
Okay, but I'm going to remind you that if your favorite number was 5 because of your soccer jersey.
Okay, well, 5 is one of my favorite numbers, but let me tell you about another one, the square root of 2.
All right, let's hear all about it.
So the square root of 2, irrational, probably the first irrational number that humans ever discovered. And if you remember back to our episode, Rudy Tooty, we talk all about how to compute rational approximations to square roots. One of my all-time favorite mathematical approximation processes. So if you don't mind, I'm going to like both 5 and the square root of 2.
Go right ahead, but I'm going to like making fun of you for being both mathy and nerdy about that.
All right, fair enough. But that's not even the nerdiest reason we found for some mathematician to have a favorite number. Do you remember Matt Parker?
Oh, yeah. We both read his book, Humble Pie, a couple years ago, right?
Yeah, well, check this nerd out and the number he chose.
So I'm very quickly going to talk to you about my all-time favorite number. And my favorite number, like many people, is 3,435. I take the nervous laughter as, yes, that's my favorite number as well. So 3435 is a fantastic number. If you've not met it before, you're in for a treat here. Because if you take all the digits of 3,435 and then you proceed to raise each digit to the power of itself, and then you add those numbers together, the total is 3,435. I'm going to be honest, I thought you'd be more impressed. That is a very unusual property. That is the only number that does that. There is no other number with the same property. So 3,435 is a very unique number in that regard.
Blimey, I can't believe he's not talking about 13.
Blimey, Noah, I can't believe you have such a bad British accent.
Oh, well, should I switch back to my scrappy southern lawyer voice?
You know, I think we'd all rather you didn't.
Okay, fine. You know, Matt's not the last mathematician that we heard from. We also got this submission from friend of the show, Julie Dixon. Listeners might remember that we interviewed her a few years ago about her book, Fact Tactics.
Oh, let me guess. I bet Julie's favorite number has something to do with multiplication.
Let's take a listen and see.
Hi, Pete and Noah. Thanks for reaching out and inviting me to share my favorite number. My favorite number is 42. And, well, why? It's because it is the answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything, according to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. But seriously, 42 is an interesting number because of the factors 6 and 7. Looking at 6 times 7 and thinking about multiplicative reasoning allows us to think about many, many different fact strategies. And you know I'm so interested in fact tactics and fact strategies to develop multiplicative reasoning that the product of 42 just makes sense.
That was a good pick, but as a third grade teacher, I have to say that I don't really want to hear about the factors of 42 because I don't want to hear 6, 7 again for the rest of my life. But I digress. What I really want to say is that I'm still finding it really interesting how many different kinds of reasons people have for choosing their favorite numbers. But still, it always comes down to something that they just sort of find a connection to, something that they find aesthetically pleasing for some reason.
Yeah, and I think it has a lot to do with the stories that people tell about themselves. You know, they think about who they are and they think about these important moments in their own life's journey. And oftentimes there's some hook there, right? The numbers relate somehow to something they consider to be important about themselves. We actually got a call from Batsheva Frankel from the Overthrowing Education podcast. And she has a really interesting story about Hebrew numerology and why she loves the number 36.
Hi, this is Batsheva Frankel, and my favorite number is 36. And the reason why is because in Hebrew, every letter also has a numerical value. And the numerical value for the word for life, which is chai, is 18. So 36, of course, is double life or double chai, double 18. So that's life plus even more life, like living life to the fullest, blessing someone with the fullest life ever. So 36 is like extra life.
Oh, that's really cool. And Batsheva wasn't the only person whose favorite is sort of spiritual in nature.
Hi, my name's Patty Baker. My favorite number's 3. I kind of like it. Father, Son, Holy Ghost. There are 3 sisters in my family. I just like 3.
Somewhere in the ancient mystic trinity, you get 3 as a magic number.
You know, one thing that's really standing out to me is that the stories about why people choose their favorite numbers are just as varied as the numbers themselves. And I got to say, Pete, now that we've heard all of these, even Ernie would have to agree that these stories were not boring.
Totally. Not boring at all.
But that does happen to remind me of one more submission that we received from my good friend, Kate.
Oh, right. Kate. I got to say, her favorite number really is perfect.
Hi, my favorite number is 6, and it has been ever since I heard Bert describe why it's his favorite number.
Gee, that sounds boring, Bert.
Oh, not my number.
Oh, I guess not.
No.
No, certainly not. Not your number, Bert. Bert?
Huh?
What's your favorite number?
I thought you'd never ask. 6.
6?
My favorite number is 6.
Bert, nobody's favorite number is 6.
Sometimes I spend the whole afternoon sitting around and singing a tune about 6.
6.
Sometimes I think of 6 bricks.
Bert, that's very boring.
Or else I think of 6 sticks.
Oh, that's even more boring.
Not 5 bricks or sticks, but 6. Now 2 is your eyes and 1's your nose and 5 is your fingers or your toes and 4 is the legs on an easy chair. Yet there's no number can compare with 6.
How about 9 or 3?
Nothing more lovely than 6.
I don't know, Bert.
When someone says, hey, Bert, pick a number, well, I always pick the one nobody picks. My favorite number is 6.
You know, I hate to break this to you, Bert, but 6 isn't anybody's favorite number.
That's my favorite number, Ernie.
Oh my God, I'm losing my mind over this circularity thing that I just thought of.
Circularity? What do you mean?
So Kate picked 6 because Bert did, right?
Yeah.
But now 6 is no longer a number that no one else has picked. So Bert's reason for picking 6 in the first place isn't true anymore. Clearly, Bert will decide that 6 actually isn't his favorite number, and that means Kate will no longer choose it as her favorite either. But then Bert could pick it again because no one else has. And I'm pretty sure Kate would be interested in picking 6 again, too.
Yeah, so maybe we need to email Bert and let him know somebody out there did pick 6 and that it's all his fault.
Don't mess with the circle because it's all going to collapse.
Okay. Anyway, Kate was the only one who chose 6. I don't think we had anyone else who called in with 6. So, Bert, there's only one person.
And you know, 6 is a really cool number. Would you like me to tell you about a famous open problem in topology involving the six-dimensional sphere?
I think we'd all rather you didn't.
Okay, I deserve that.
Well, Pete, that was a really fun conversation. I want to say thanks to all of our listeners, friends, and guests who participated by sending in their fabulous stories about their favorite numbers. I think we had just about every number imaginable in today's episode.
Well, maybe not every number. That would have made for a really long show.
Okay, I'll just go with most numbers.
You know, Noah, since we're talking about favorites, I might as well tell you that among all my co-hosts, you're my favorite.
Ah, but aren't I the only one?
Don't overthink it, dude.
Bye, Math Club. We'll see you next time.
Happy holidays, Math Club. Catch you all in 2026.